Hey guys, this is Alicia in Podfic, and today we're going to be reading Red Arrow Shooting Home by Demigod Wolf. The summary is, if it included a bow and arrow, Roy would most likely excel in it. Jason shrugged. I'm just saying. Nobody's done it before. Is this a challenge, Jaybird? Alright, without further ado, let's hop right in. The thing was, Roy was a good archer. A great archer. Quite possibly the best archer to ever exist. He was constantly training his skill, during patrol and any other hero business, but also during his free time. Roy had found crazy archery challenges to do, and he had done them, and when he ran out of them, he had created his own, even crazier ones. Fall backwards down a cliff, his own safe line being the arrow he was notching that he had to shoot at the target he was rapidly losing vision on. He had almost dislocated his shoulder when the arrow had hit home, but he had succeeded. Jason hadn't been happy with him, probably because Roy had lost his footing on the climb over the cliff one too many times. The point was, if it included a bow and arrow, Roy would most likely excel at it. So this? He wasn't having it. Jason shrugged. I'm just saying. He was lounging on the couch in one of their rare afternoons with absolutely nothing to do. Nobody's done it before. He had one of his little smiles on, the annoying one that said he knew more than you, and he wasn't going to explain why. Roy wanted to bite it. He glared instead. Maybe because it comes from a made-up story? He didn't cross his arms, but only just. He settled for kicking Jason gently on his side. Jason didn't bat his socked foot away. Jason shrugged again, the movement of his shoulders pulling his shirt up a bit, just enough for a sliver of skin to be revealed right above the waistband of his sweatpants. Roy stared for a bit too long. The smirk Jason gave him was far too telling. It's fine if you think you won't succeed. Is this a challenge, Jaybird? Jason snorted, and Roy's smile went soft at the sound, at how comfortable Jason was with him. It was a hard-won privilege to witness Jason in this softness, and Roy constantly wondered what he did in his past life to deserve this now. Sure. Okay. Roy sprawled on the couch, pulling his feet on Jason's lap. Walk me through it. Book says that whoever could shoot through 12 axes would be the one to marry Penelope. Jason started, and Roy watched, his smile small and content, as it always was whenever Jason talked about things he liked. Of course, that's the easy part of the challenge because the suitors had to string the bow first. Jason tilted his head and thought. I think it was a recurve bow, and it was too rare back then, so the suitors didn't know how to work it. And they didn't have the arm strength to string it. Jason looked at him and then gazed borderline a leer and said, I'm sure you won't have any problems with that. Roy smirked at him and put his hands behind his head, flexing as he did, absolutely loving Jason's eyes on him and loving how much Jason loved his arms. Jason's hand squeezed around one of his ankles before relaxing a second later, but his hold stayed there. In some retellings, Jason started again, Penelope sits on the other side of the axes because she knows only Odysseus could complete the challenge. He paused, thumb rubbing small circles on Roy's ankle that he could barely feel through his sock. Roy found himself with a dry mouth. What would have happened if one of the suitors managed to shoot through the axes? Jason's gaze was heavy on his. Only Odysseus could shoot through 12 axes cleanly and managed to not hurt Penelope. Roy looked at the ceiling. Damn, he said, more breath than sound. That's a lot of trust to put on someone. Jason hummed, hands still on Roy's feet, his fingers starting to dig into the muscles, and Roy slowly relaxed into the couch, eyes growing heavier by the second. Hey, he said before sleep managed to drag him under. Where can I find 12 axes? Jason's answering laugh was enough to take him to dreamland. And when he woke up a couple hours later, it was already time for dinner and then patrol. The challenge lay forgotten from Roy's mind for the next few days. And it was going to stay that way, and then the 12 axes arrived. Roy walked into the kitchen and went straight to Jason, pressing himself against Jason's back and wrapping his arms around his middle. He pressed a kiss under Jason's ear and hid his smile in his shoulder at the way Jason relaxed against him. What are you making? He asked. Looking down at the pot Jason had just finished seasoning. Chicken curry, Jason said, putting the lid on the pot and turning carefully around so as to not dislodge Roy's arms. Roy didn't move back. Alfred's recipe? He asked, grin big and audible, the hope in his voice unmistaken. "Obviously," Jason said, returning the embrace and pulling Roy even closer. Roy closed his eyes and hummed, basking in the warmth that was Jason on any given moment. It only took him a couple of minutes to remember why he had gone to the kitchen in the first place. He pulled his head back from Jason's shoulder, but not by much. He nodded to the pot. "Can you leave it alone for a bit?" Roy asked. "It needs to simmer on low for about an hour, so yeah," Jason said, looking at him with a raised eyebrow. Roy grinned, smile full of teeth. "Perfect," he said, taking a step back and pulling Jason with him by the arm. "Come down to the basement with me." Jason followed him without any questions, even when Roy stopped just outside the basement door. "Okay," Roy said. "Close your eyes." "Are you for real?" Roy rolled his eyes. "Close your eyes, Jaybird, and don't you dare peek." He waggled his finger at his face, and Jason slapped it away with an amused scoff. "I'd blindfold you, but I know you'd like that." "Oh, shut up," Jason said, closing his eyes and putting his hands on top as well. But he wasn't fast enough to hide the faint blush on his cheeks. "Happy?" "Very," Roy replied, grin splitting at the seams. Teasing Jason was always fun, even if it wasn't something Roy indulged in often. The end result was better that way. Roy carefully led Jason in their basement, the place acting more as a homemade gym than anything else, though there was a hidden ramp for their bikes to go in and out. Roy had tidied up some, mostly because he needed the extra space. "Okay," Roy said. "Sit here." He gently pushed Jason back until he was sitting on the precisely placed chair. "Open your eyes only when I tell you to. I'll know if you open them beforehand," he warned him. Even with his eyes closed, Jason made it very clear that he was rolling them. Roy moved to the other side of the basement and picked up his recurve bow. He had to look for it for a couple of hours. It having been buried under old equipment, Roy preferred a compound bow these days. The sound of a bow being notched was too recognizable, and Roy saw Jason sit up straight on his chair. Roy exhaled and relaxed his shoulders, fingers sure on the arrow and the bow, his target in sight. "Okay," he said. He had to time this right. "Open your eyes." He barely gave Jason 3 seconds to assess his situation before he was letting the arrow go, watching it fly through 12 axes cleanly before finally hitting its target an inch above Jason's head. Jason's eyes were wide, and Roy put his bow down on his side table before putting his hands on his hips. "Turns out," Roy said, watching as Jason's head moved from the axis to him, "only nobody and I can do this challenge." He didn't let Jason speak. "Yes, I read how nobody was Odysseus' name, you pun-loving fuck." Jason let out a surprised bark of laughter and stood up. "Fuck," he said, shaking his head, smile big enough that it crinkled his eyes. "I don't think I've ever been this attracted to you before." Roy's answering laugh was soft. He picked up an apple from the table and threw it at Jason. "Thought about putting it on your head, but I didn't think you'd appreciate picking apple out of your hair." Jason caught the apple effortlessly and then looked at Roy. "You know," he started conversationally, walking towards him slowly, "throwing an apple at someone in ancient Greece was a way to show you're intending to propose to them." Roy didn't gape at him, but it was close. He nodded instead, like it was all part of his plan. Jason's smile said that he knew otherwise. "Would you accept?" he asked, voice low and more vulnerable than he would have liked. He saw Jason falter for barely a second before the younger man was suddenly right in front of him. "Well, I got the apple, didn't I?" Roy's smile was wide enough to hurt his cheeks. "Does that mean that if we eat the apple, we'll be married?" Jason shook his head with a chuckle, placing the apple next to Roy's bow on the table and putting his arms around Roy's shoulder. "I don't think it works that way, but sure." Roy put his arms around Jason's waist, thumb moving underneath his shirt and touching skin. He smirked. "We should eat the apple so we can go consummate the marriage immediately." He dug his thumbs in Jason's lower back and felt him huff a laugh against his shoulder. "We'll save the apple for dessert," Jason said, pulling back some, just so he could press a brief kiss to Roy's lips, before pulling out of his embrace fully and moving to the door. "I've got curry cooking." "You're my dessert," Roy said with an appreciative leer as he stared very pointedly at Jason's ass. "Shut the fuck up," Jason said, cheeks red, starting his way up to the house, the sound of Roy's laughter following him all the way. Alright guys, and that is the end of Red Arrow Shooting Home by Demigod Wolf. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next video.